Welcome, bienvenue, and welcome back to Opus Magnum with Lyte. Today, we've got the stain remover. This one's a little bit interesting. It uses a technique that I haven't used a whole lot previously. So we'll start off right here with, well, actually, that's our fast solution. We'll wait on that. So we're going to switch on over to slide arm. So here we are. We need to make a relatively oddly shaped component. And so it causes some serious problems with area. Cost is not too bad, except since it's so large and unwieldy, it's difficult to just make it work. Like, here we are with a piston and a track. It's very hard to get the job done with anything less than that. So this 90G cost is fairly decent for this particular problem. And so it builds it little by little. You just need to have a thing. You need to be able to salt it. In the end, it's not too bad. But this is not good for the area because, well, I mean, it's using tons of blank spaces. And cost-wise, whenever you're using a piston, you should probably check to see whether or not you can get it done with just an arm. And so by having something that can extend far enough, you can swing this thing around without too much trouble. But if you want to make it cheaper, you've got this little hill. We're actually going to be using this in this one and in the next problem as well. And so with this one, you run into the trouble of, with the 3 inputs, trying to move them around can sometimes be a bit problematic because you need to have this little triangle to be able to use this little thing right here. And unfortunately, you need a straightaway to be able to get away from having 2 inputs right next to one another. You could have them out here on the other end and potentially get by that way. But in the end, I was not able to find any way to make this triangle enough to get the inputs to where they needed to go. The assembly is more or less the same. You assemble the thing, but we get a little flourish there at the end where we salt all of the edges. It's just a nice little flourish. You could probably salt them somewhere along the way and save yourself a little bit of time. Like if you put the salt maybe here, I'm not entirely certain where you would put it because you need to be able to get things through normal and salted. So I just put it at the end, salt it right before you drop it. It's fine. But having 4 tracks and a regular arm is 10 G's cheaper than having 2 tracks and a piston. And so the only really good way of making it any cheaper would be finding some way of removing one of these tracks. And I just couldn't make it happen. Because right here with 3 is too close, I tried a couple configurations in here to make it such that you can get this guy out of here. Because if we pull it out here and try to rotate it, it'll hit the lead. If you pull it here and try to rotate it, it'll hit itself or the water or pretty much anything. And so I don't see how you can line these things up in such a way to actually be able to rotate things out of the way. So basically, the only thing that I could possibly think of from here would be, instead of having them adjacent within the rotations, moving the lead up here and having something else here, and moving the water over here, and like having the exit down here and the binder up there. But even that seems a little suspect. So if you're the type to try to hyper optimize my ideas, I think you might be able to get away with having this up here somewhere. Again, probably here, such that this is coming off of here, this is coming off of here, and then you'd put the water over here somewhere. And then you'd have this maybe here. So let's just do a quick walkthrough, see whether or not we can actually make this work. So we need to be able to get, well, this would need to be the right shape. It needs to match this. It doesn't really necessarily need to be like that. It could be like this. So getting that in here is fine. And then getting it from here to here seems fine. There's enough room to be able to make the product here, but we wouldn't necessarily be able to get that product past the water to the exit. So we might need to reconsider where we put this exit. So we'll put it up there for now. And so the question then becomes, can we move this guy? Well, we can move it up here, shift it back around and over. So that should be fine. And then getting this guy over here is no problem at all. So the main concern now becomes salting, which we could probably do right here. Because we'll be able to move this guy here, which should never really hit anything. And then slide it back. So that should be enough to get this done. The question is, will it work? And so we just very quickly make it work. So that's good enough for that. We reset, grab left, drop, minus, grab right. Wait a minute. We're going to need... So we're here. We actually want to go plus there. Grab right to here. Right again. And minus and drop. Oops. And there we are. We've got our tin in position. So we turn all the way around and go one position, grab the air. Because we've got the tin already, we're going to push this way for the next section. So we need the air, bring it around, and plus. And from there, we're going to push it actually, yeah, because we spin it all the way around. 1, 2. But we're going to want to actually be somewhere else, because if we try to pull it through here, it's probably going to collide. It's worth a check, though. Yeah. So pulling it through there is problematic. We actually need to have it over by 1. Can we... Okay, so it is fully connected. So we're going to grab it, we're going to rotate it, then shift by 1, then rotate it more. So we shift it over there, we rotate it, we need to shift the other direction. Then we rotate it into... Oh, that's not the right place, because now it's trying to shift it over here. Which is just no good, because the thing is in the way. And this is where you run into the problems that I was running into, is do you have enough space to actually get this done? And so do we pull it around the other way? Well, if we try to pull it around the other way, we run into the problem of we put our salter here. So let's put our salter somewhere else and we'll figure that out later. So instead of going to the right, we go to the left. And now it's in position. And then we can push and twist. And then do it again. And so we have it. Oh, why did it not? One, two, three. Ah, we are not in position. And so now we've got this branch, but it's not salted, which leads you to the question, should we have salted it? We probably should have. So where do we salt it? Somewhere that is not in this path, but is nearby. So I'm thinking here. And so all we need to do is along the path, we just do a tiny little shimmy, and it's salted. And so now we should be able to, at least in theory, repeat this process. Because with the water, we can do a similar thing where we pull it, when we want the salt, we pull it this way, shift, and then pull it back. So long as nothing is ever in the way right here, we'll be fine. But now is the moment of truth, because, well, this is the point at which it might start having things get in the way. And we need to reset to have the tin in the correct position, which I believe is right here. So now we're going to have a problem because we can't pull from here onto there because it'll collide right there. So our previous method of getting in there is no longer viable. We can't pull it from this way because the tin is in the way. And so from there you go, okay, well, is there anything we can do about this? Well, the only thing you would really be able to do is if you could shove this out of the way temporarily and then bring it back, which doesn't seem any more feasible than trying to do it directly. Or if we could somehow push it from this direction. But again, if we start here, we're already on there. And so this is how I approach trying to get down to these smaller or cheaper solutions. And sometimes it just doesn't lead anywhere. But this might give you enough of an idea to be able to crack the code yourself. So that's my 3 is too close. It doesn't seem to want to work for me idea. If you can make it work, feel free to share it down in the comments over on Twitter or on Discord, link down in the doobly-doo. So that's our nice cheap solutions. Now let's work on getting them small. First off, we've got Snuggle. It's nice and tight. It uses, granted, a piston and a track, but pistons are generally okay for size-based solutions. And so it goes around and does all of the work necessary for building it, and it tries to do it as much as possible over each of these objects. But you saw right there, and are probably going, Lyte, what are you doing? Because it went way out of bounds there. I mean, that used up 5 hexes that we really did not need to use. But if you're looking closely at my final solution, it doesn't have an area of 22. It actually has an area of 25 because, well, you still run into some problems trying to actually use the hexes properly. And so I still use the same general setup because I like having the multi-binder here for doing both in the same direction without having to move things a ton. But now we only have 2 unused hexes on the top, and you can see those happen when we have this first set of 5 together, and we need to make it face the other direction. Because we don't have binders pointing that way, so we do need to flip it around. And so we get it into position, but once we get to here, we've got a bit of a problem. Because this is the best place to rotate it. Because if we rotate it here, we get the problem we had in the first solution. If we rotate it here, it'll push this guy out here. And I'm fairly sure it'll rotate this guy through at least one of these as well. And so by rotating here, you only get those 2. It's not great. And there it happens again. But it gets it facing the other way without causing too much destruction. So this is another one where I'm like, well, I am using 2 blank hexes. I'm using a multi-binder that doesn't use one of its prongs. And I've got a length 3 track. All of these say to me, you can probably do better. But to this point, I don't see how. So if there were some way to use just 1 binder, and then have like this guy down here somehow, and then using only 2 track instead of 3, because you need at least 2 track to be able to use this glyph with a piston. You need at least 2. Because if you've got it here, it only reaches 2 of the 3. With 1 piece of track and can reach all 3, you're good to go. So if it's possible to use just a single binder, have this glyph in a position where it overlaps with the stuff, and then somehow magically rotate it with the same efficiency, great. I don't see how. So if you've managed to beat 25, awesome. But the top percentile is 33, so I'm happy with my 25. Now, let's go to my speedy solution, which is the only fast solution I tried because it's fairly straightforward, at least to me, how to get this done. Because the amount of lead you need to be creating is really minimal compared to everything else. So you've got one area making air and salt and binding them together. You've got another area doing the same thing, but with water, because you've got symmetric sorts of things going on. So you've got them, they come in and bind. To this point, it's fairly trivial how you get it done, so long as it's done prior to the last bit. Because the real important part is having this in position to receive the last 2. And have this grabbed as it arrives to be able to dump it in the bin. So you generally don't worry about the tin. There is far less metal usage in this than anything else. The real important part is that you salt first, because it's slower, and then you have the water going grab, 2, 3, 4. And there you are into the bin. Now, I really love this one because it gets to spin around. It's not often that you get to have a truly fast solution that spins like that. Because usually that sort of spinning is wasting time that you don't have. But in this particular case, it's preparatory work while something more cumbersome is happening. And even though this is more cumbersome, it's still going grab, move, grab, move, grab, move, grab, move all the time. And so if there's a faster way to do this, it's using a trick that I don't know. And even tricks that I know sometimes just get lost in my brain because, well, there was a better solution to a problem from last week that used something I had used on a previous solution, and I had just forgotten about transmuting the metals after they're already bound. Ugh. Sometimes this game just has too many things for you to remember, but they're really fun. And sometimes you get a nice solution where you're like, oh, I love that it gets to spin. So that's my 53 cycle solution. I don't anticipate there's anything better unless it uses something I don't know about. Because each of those things needs to be bound twice, but there are two things that need to be bound twice, and you cannot have this tin on two different binders at the same time. So any other faster solution would somehow need to work magic. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. It just works magic. Because if you try to bind those things sooner, that means the last thing you bind is salt, but the salt needs to be salted. And that's an extra thing that needs to be done. And in this case, that extra thing would just waste your time. Yeah. But that's all I've got for this episode with our stain remover. We've looked into why I don't think we can do it for any cheaper. We looked into doing it nice and small and how I feel it might be able to be smaller, but I just don't see it. And then we've got our nice, fast solution, which was just my solution. Because at this point in trying to get things done, I had learned quite a lot of the techniques for getting it done quickly, so you can expect there to be slightly fewer iterative solutions towards going quickly. Because a lot of the stuff for going fast in the base game, I'm not talking about the production mechanics, is fairly similar from puzzle to puzzle. There are similar things to take a look at, and the only super tricks that get out of hand are the ones that don't happen very often, like transmuting after it's been bound. But that's the stain remover, and I will see you in the next episode of Opus Magnum with Lyte.